kind of talk about our COVID policy. Some of the information has been shared with you in some of the information that's been sent out. But the main thing is that we've worked very closely with the rink and trying to stay in line with the Virginia Health Code in terms of what we can do currently in phase 3 of Virginia's reopening. So there is a limitation on the number of people that can be in the rink, as well as what access we have to some of the normal amenities that we've had at SkateQuest. So it's gonna be inconvenient. You know, I think some of you may have experienced it if you participated in our summer skills sessions this past summer. You know, the travel teams have been handling practices and games for a couple of weeks now. So the main thing is that all players, when they come to the rink for practice or for a game, will need to basically be completely dressed with the exception of helmet, gloves, and skates. And each, depending upon which ice sheet you're on, there will be a specific entrance that you would go in. And the rink has areas set up with large tents and mats and chairs where you will come in. There's a health screening that is done, a temperature check, and a series of the kind of standard, at this point, COVID-related questions. You know, have you had a fever above a certain temperature? Or have you been in contact with anyone that has been tested positive for COVID, or is currently in quarantine? So those sorts of questions. And as I mentioned, the temperature check, when all of that's checked off on, then the player can sit down in one of the chairs. They put their skates on. They're required to wear masks up until they put their helmets on. So as they go through the check-in, skates on, helmets and gloves on, masks can be removed. There are no equipment bags that are allowed into the rink, so that would stay out in that area where they put their skates on. They would then go into the rink, have their practice or game. There are markings on the bench areas around the rink. We're currently only allowing one parent per player to escort their player in while they're on the ice. And you know, they would participate in their practice or game. As soon as the game is over, practice is over, they need to leave the rink, go back, remove their skates, mask on. As soon as the helmet comes off, remove the skates, and then they would leave the rink. And that allows the SkateQuest staff time in between each session. So we've expanded the amount of time in between sessions in order to do additional cleaning, and then the next session would go on. 1 second, Brendan, if you want to, I need to jump on this other call for a second. So if
Sure,
you want to,
I can keep going.
Jump in here and I can come back.
Sure. Just let me go forward and talk about just our overall program this year versus a traditional year. And I want to congratulate, first of all of you for making it, because we're at about 99 participants. And I don't know how many I can actually host on this thing, but I am recording it. So anybody who misses it will be able to rewatch it. Normally, and I'm saying a lot of this for you who are new to our program, normally the way our league would start is you would have an initial evaluation skate, which would have been about the second weekend in September. And after that, we would have had one practice, and then we would have done an initial draft of teams. Then the 2 weekends later, we would have done what's called a jamboree, where teams play each other. And then from there, we make final rosters. I say this because with this pandemic, there's been obviously a lot of inconveniences, but there's also been some good that has come out of it. And one of the things is we are going to actually be able to take our time to create the teams correctly. One of the reasons I ran for the board in the first place is, as someone who coached house for 15 years, it always bothered me that we hurried up. We tended to hurry and make a quick decision that lasted 6 months rather than take a little bit of time to make a better decision. A hockey season is a really long season when your team goes 0-21, and trust me, I've been there. It's everybody wants balanced teams, and that's always our goal, and that's always the coach's goal. But when we don't know the players that well, it's really hard to do. So one of the good things that's going to come out of this is we're going to get to see the players at least 3 or 4 times on the ice, and the directive I'm giving to the coaches is somewhere between 3 to 6 practices. I suspect it's going to be about 4 before we really have a good handle on what every player's skill level is, and then we can divide up the teams and do a draft. And at that point, we should hopefully have really good balanced teams. As Kevin mentioned on logistics, if you haven't been to the rink, there's arrows going in and out, and I'll get a little bit more to games when we talk about it. As far as creating the teams, because there's no evaluation skate, what I've had to do is take all of the evaluations that we got from last year and get input from coaches. And I'm going to I've actually created it for 3 of the leagues. I need 1 more to go. We have created an initial set of rosters. Those are not necessary. Matter of fact, I'm positive those will not be the final rosters. So I'm going to give those rosters to each of the coaches and just say, here's a roster for your team. For now, they'll give you the first 4 practices for that group, and we need to keep them in what's called a pod. So for those of you whose kids might be at 14U or 16U, a lot of times there might be some drills that involve both teams that go from each corner of the rink, maybe do a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-1, something like that. We can't do that. We cannot mix teams on both sides of the ice. And for the 8U, once we set the groupings and say, this is the group on this half and this is the group on that half, they're not going to change. So those are some of the practical changes that you have at every division. The practices will start this Saturday, and I know people have been asking about this. I don't have your specific time yet. You'll have it by Wednesday, but I can tell you if you are in the 8U division, your practice will either be at 6 a.m., 7:20, or 8:40. And if you're in the 10U on Saturday, if you're in the 10U, 12U division, you'll be either at 6 a.m. or 7:40 on the other sheet of ice. The 12U/14U will have their first event practice this Sunday. It'll either be a 5:50 to 7:10 or a 7:30 to 8:45. And the 16U, 18U will also be Sunday. It'll be 5:20 to 6:40 or 7 to 8:20. And just a note on the 16U, 18U, that league is still accepting reservations. So you will hear from your coach. And when I say your coach, it'll be the coach who's running that practice for those first 4 practices. And that's what we're going to have to do to evaluate the players. And again, when we try and group the players, we are going to do our best not to move them from group to group, even within the teams. At the travel level, we have you kind of assign kids to groups, and they sort of stay in their groups, and they go from station to station. They kind of stay in those groups. As far as water bottles go, especially at 8U, one of the things that always happens is kids come on the ice, they line their water bottles up on the boards, and then when there's a water break, they all go straight over to them. What I'm going to ask coaches to do is not have one uniform water break where everybody goes and gets water. It's just when you hit the station that's nearest to the bench, that's the time you get water, and you space out when you do it. And we can also use the other doors that we might not traditionally use and put water bottles outside of them, so kids are not all going to the same spot. And make sure your kid has a label with their name on them for water bottle. You know, there's going to be 10 kids with a green Gatorade water bottle, and we see it all the time. And, you know, they're walking off with a different water bottle. You can't have that this year, especially. You should never have that just from the regular cold and flu season, but this year it's obviously especially important. Some specific logistics and items specific to all age groups and with each age group. When we have penalties, we will not be manning the penalty boxes. If a player gets a penalty, they are to go to their bench, and they can either sit at the end of the bench or just off the bench. And when the penalty is over, somebody just goes on, either that player or somebody else can go on the ice. It doesn't have to be that specific player. And for those of you who play men's league hockey, we're not playing touch-up rules where that player has to touch and then somebody can go. The minute the penalty ends, somebody can go on the ice, but there's not going to be somebody sitting with them in the penalty box. As for the penalty box, that will be where the scorekeeper sits, and the clock operator will be by themselves in that little area. So there's not going to be, we haven't been doing music. There's just one person in there, and the scorekeeper is generally in the penalty box, and they're talking in between there. So they're socially distanced and not sitting right next to each other. And the logical question is, what if we're from the same family? Well, that can't happen because you can only have one parent per family attending an event. And that applies to volunteer positions. I'm an assistant coach on the 14U Black team, and I have watched every one of my son's games sitting right here on Live Barn. If, for those of you who are not aware, there is something called Live Barn. I think it's just livebarn.com. And if you, I think it's about $7 or $8 a month, and it's actually a pretty good watch. You get a really nice overhead view of the game, and the cameras follow the action around. So if you're not the parent that's going to the game, you can actually watch the game. You can have as many people at your house watching the game on your computer, and that's just the way it is. If you can actually get your child to watch the tape of the game, they'll become a better hockey player, but I would issue you good luck with that. I've tried, but my son really doesn't have any interest in watching his hockey games. For the 8U group, one of the things that the coaches have brought up, and we have quite a few coaches, and a special thank you to that 8U group, have been very good about helping me out so far and thinking through the logistics at 8U. That's the most challenging of all the age groups. And we're probably going to have to stagger the end of practice a little bit. We don't want 40 kids all cramming the door at the end of practice. And so we'll continue to work on this, but it's probably going to be with starting with 5 minutes to go in practice, they'll start releasing the players. Again, you're not meeting them. You're not taking the skates off right at the door. They get off the ice and they go completely out the rink, as Kevin mentioned, and there's areas. That's going to be a little bit more of a challenge when it gets colder, but we'll just have to deal with it. For the 10U, 12U age group, this is the only age group that's maxed out. And I guess I'm going to take a moment to talk about why we had to divide the kids up this way. There were not enough players at every age group to have a complete 4-team season. You have to have 4 teams for this to really work. So we had to take the 12U lower birth year and put them with the 10U and the 12U upper birth year. The 12U upper birth year and put them with the 14U. And one thing I wanted to address with the 12U, 14U, I only got one email about this so far, but I thought I'd cover it. I was worried that, that I would get some emails that the 12U majors would have some concerns about playing with the 14U age group. Let me calm your fears there. A lot of the kids who would have been select players or at the top of that 14U age group got moved up to travel. There was some shifting around. Some kids moved clubs. A lot of kids decided not to play. And so quite a few of that 14U age group has moved up to play travel. So I know pretty much every kid in that league because I've been coaching there for years, and I think we'll be fine. I don't think there's going to be a competitive issue, and I don't think if you're a 2008 birth year, you don't have anything to worry about. That league will have, as of right now, 13 to 14 skaters per team. The 10U, 12U will have 15 skaters per team. 8U is at 10 players per team. The 16/18U is right now going to play 4-on-4 full ice. Kind of makes me wish I was a 16U, 18U hockey player because that sounds like a lot of fun. And there's right now, I believe, 10 players per team. So we still have openings in this league. Just rostered a kid today. At each age group, I believe we have one goalie per team. So when you combine that 10U, 12U, and the 12U, 14U, at each one of those age groups, there's going to be one goalie per team. Kevin, did you have any, are you still listening to our meeting? Did you have anything you wanted to finish up on the COVID policy?
Yeah, so I'm actually still listening on both, but the other main thing I wanted to bring up, I heard you kind of talk through some of the other rink guidelines, is more so our policy in relation to if somebody either comes into exposure with someone with COVID or their player or someone in their family tests positive. So that policy for reference is up on the Reston Raiders website under the policy section of the website. The main thing is, excuse me, should you be exposed or test positive for COVID, it's important that you get in touch with me or with the board of directors as soon as possible. You can send an email to president@restonraiders.com. What we will want to do then is determine, what the circumstances are, symptoms, positive test, as well as determining, were others on the team potentially exposed during that contagious period. And then the board would make a determination on what needs to happen. We've run into a few of these scenarios already this season. We have not had to pull any of our teams off the ice, but any players or parents or coaches that have been involved in these situations, excuse me, have been required to stay home from the rink for 14 days. So, that's the most important thing, is that we need to know, so that we can, determine, how wide ranging this may be. We also then do follow up with folks within both the team where there was potential exposure, as well as others in the program, just to let them know. We're keeping all of the details and privacy very close at vest. It's minimal details that are being shared, but what we feel is important for folks to know in order to maintain some transparency and hopefully make folks feel at ease.
Kevin, the other thing that we've been doing recently is having somebody for each team tracking everybody who shows up at each practice and each game. I'm assuming we're expected to do that at house as well.
So the affiliate is requiring knowing who is in the rink, both players, coaches, and parents, for both practices and games. Some teams are using spreadsheets to do that. The team that I'm involved with is actually using a combination of TeamSnap for our own parents and coaches and players, as well as the score sheet. And the reason for that is They want us to be able to keep track of that in case there is an exposure and we know who to circle back to. It should be a little bit easier within our house program because we know generally which teams are on the ice for practices, which teams have been on the ice for games. We know which officials are assigned to our games. So from a contact tracing perspective, it makes things a lot easier.
Right. Okay.
Kevin or Brendan, did you see there was a question that came in about limiting the parents for 8U? Because if it's limited to 40 parents and there's 6 teams on the ice, how is that going to work? Will there be that many teams on the ice? You know what I mean?
There should be 5. There should be, I think.
For 8U on one sheet if they're doing
Yep.
cross ice?
Oh, so there'd be 6 teams. No.
Kevin, do you have a?
Kevin, I'm actually going to ask you for help on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Is he on the other call?
He's coming.
Kevin? Oh. Let me come back to Kevin on that one because there's a couple other things I realized. I saw some questions and we'll circle back around.
There should be goalie coaches, right?
What's that?
Goalie coaches should be on the ice for house practices, correct?
Yes.
And there will not be selects this year.
There will not be selects this year. Nope, that's all we can do to get this off the ground. So as of right now, nope, we will not be doing select teams. I just wanted to miss something.
So is 12U minor birth year playing with 10U?
Yes.
Yes, so Lance, yes. We'll follow the 10U schedule. It'll be the 10U, 12U minor schedule is how it should be named.
That's how it'll look. Again, if you look on the master schedule, it should say 10U/12U, right, Gail?
If that was updated, yes.
Yep. Well, eventually it'll say 10U/12U or 12U/14U.
So for now, I would just advise everyone to follow whatever email you get from a coach with a schedule. That'll be
what we are not going to do is update the entire website with player rosters for every team and then redo them in 4 weeks. That will create more confusion and more problems than it will solve. So we're going to operate via email. The one thing I did want to mention, I've only had a couple requests in the past. Sometimes, something comes up and a player may be on one team, but then go practice with a different team. We don't have the flexibility to do that this year. The other thing we're working through at 8U is the logistics of handing off the goalie gear. We want to make sure that gets sanitized in between each use. The other thing you might see, and especially note this for coaches, I didn't see it on the first practice, but the Saturday ice slots, but for some of the practice slots during the week, instead of an hour and 20 minutes of ice time, there will be an hour and 15, or maybe even sometimes an hour and 10, because the rink staff has to come through and wipe everything down and sanitize everything in between each practice. And as such, please instruct your kids. They're not, and the rink staff is going to be pretty good about this. Do not linger around the rink or, chase each other around. When you're done with whatever your event is, you go straight outside, because we will need to get you out of the rink before we can get the next teams into the rink. Goalies. Right now, the goalies have been there. If you go to the rink, there's some tents that are set up outside with mats to get you into the rink. So all of the travel goalies have been dressing there. We haven't used any of the locker rooms to this point, I don't believe. Kevin, you want to
We
chime in?
only for the 18U players, but since 16U and 18U will be combined, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. Kevin might weigh in on that if he gets back on the call.
I think he's looking at the other call. But they've been successful. It hasn't been a problem, even when it's been raining. There's a fairly large tent outside, and actually there's a couple of them. And so when you're coming on for practice, again, since the players aren't spending, all they're doing is putting on skates and getting into the rink, there's lots of extra seats that are right outside the rink. So they're pretty quick. They don't idle for very long. They get dressed and they get in the rink. So even though we've had 2 sheets of ice with 4 teams going in and out, there hasn't been any problem getting kids in and out without big crowds. Sorry, just I gave you times, but I didn't give you AM or PM. So for the start, the 10U, 12U, and the 8U, those are AM times on Saturday. The 14U, 12U major, and the 16U, 18U, those are going to be PM times. And those are generally when your game times are going to be. They're going to, for both of those leagues, it'll be Sunday afternoon starting at either 5:20 or 5:50 for the 12U, 14U. The 14U league has always played on the Olympic rink, and the 16U, 18U always plays on the NHL rink. This year, that'll actually be more important because the 16U, 18U is going to be playing 4-on-4. And even when you have 15 players on a roster, it's not uncommon to have 7 of them show up at that age group. So the smaller rink is actually going to suit them pretty well this year.
From Kevin, most likely the 16U, 18U will not have access to a locker room. So no players for house will have access to a locker room. And I'm waiting for him to respond about the 8U parents coming into the game.
Yeah. Again, we're probably going to want it so that you don't actually watch practice if you can avoid it, because it's just going to be that. Like I said, that's the most challenging age group by far, with the number of kids and the number of players that what we've had to work through.
Well, the upstairs is not opened up; it is closed off. So
Yep.
The mezzanine is not available. They have, if you haven't been in the rink, the bleachers are marked off with like taped X's where people can spread out so people are not sitting next to each other. It really hasn't been very crowded. There's enough space around the whole sheet of ice that some people are standing around the edges, some people are sitting on bleachers, but people are pretty spread out. And they're pretty strict about the 1 parent per player. My husband is a coach. I have 3 children that play hockey. I have yet to be inside the rink to watch any games. So I've been using Live Barn. So I totally understand the frustration of not being able to have both parents in, but it's just the way it is right now.
Yeah. And please, do all teams have dedicated goalies? Yes, Tom, every team will have at least 1 dedicated goalie. The next logical question to come up from that is what happens if my goalie breaks his arm riding his bike down the street? And that is, yes, the voice of experience speaking. We do have, there's a couple of kids at least the 10U age group who would be able to fill in if there's, if there's another kid who's interested in trying goalie. The one thing I would remind people is that our regular season is a lot of fun hockey, but it has no impact on what happens in the playoffs. So if we get a kid who can try the equipment, that's fine. But just remember, the regular season is about hockey development and getting kids better at playing hockey. The standings mean absolutely nothing when we get to our round robin playoffs. Any other questions? Those are the big things that I had to cover. I didn't want to keep everybody on here all night, and I tried to be as efficient as possible. I'm sure I'm missing something. As far as distributing jerseys and pucks to coaches, I'll get the pucks. I plan to be there this weekend. Jerseys, I will wait until we get closer to after we have a draft, which means your player needs something to start the season with. In order to help us do the evaluations, if they're a returning Raider player or any player and they have a jersey with their name on the back of it, I would ask that they wear that for practice, just because it's going to help us with the evals. If kids love, and actually as a coach, I love kids wearing different colored jerseys to practice. It makes it a lot easier to do 2-on-2 battle stations if everybody's got a different color on. But for the first 3 or 4 practices, if they have a jersey with the name on the back of it, I would appreciate them wearing that. There's no requirements for equipment color, socks, or gloves. You're welcome to wear orange gloves if you want. And there's always one kid who does. We will distribute socks and jerseys to everybody. So everybody's going to have, once we get going and start playing games, everybody's going to have the same, everybody's going to start with the same colored socks and the same colored jersey. Not every player will necessarily finish with them all, because I'm sure some of them is going to leave some somewhere. But for the 6 a.m. games, they will be serving coffee. I am told that McDonald's does have a mean cup of coffee. I don't drink coffee, but I will tell you that the Diet Coke, actually another important point, the water filling stations are not on at the rink. So your water bottle, not only do you need to bring a water bottle with your name on it, it needs to be filled with water from your house or somewhere other than the rink. And I believe the cafe at the rink is open.
Mm-hmm.
I think the vending machines are not.
Vending machines are closed. The cafe is open for its typical hours.
And yes, they are serving Starbucks for those of you who are interested. Are there any other questions? Again, we've had a lot of.
I'm hoping that about the 8U parents, I texted him the question 3 times, so I was hoping he was answering it right now about the 8U parents. But yes, if it is not, no water bottle requirements, Larry, just whatever kind of water bottle.
Whatever.
Skate sharpening is available. But for the 8U parents, the video feed would be, well, there is a view on Live Barn that shows you the whole rink at once, but it's kind of difficult to see close up. Another option is sometimes people have been doing Facebook Live or some kind of streaming thing from the rink. I know some people on the teams have done that, so other people can watch from home or from outside. But yes, I do expect to get an answer from Kevin, and that will definitely be shared. Players cages, according to the PVAHA, the cage on the helmet or the shield will count as a mask, as a face covering. And it's up to them if they want to wear.
They've gone back and forth on this. What we have been doing, what we will be asking the coaches doing, is to disperse your team out. So sometimes, kids may actually have to stand off the bench a little bit. And the other, we have some players who, initially there was a requirement that kids had to wear a mask on the bench, but not on the ice. The reason that requirement came into play was because in order to get Maryland to designate hockey as a medium risk sport, they needed to do some compromise. And so that's how that rule came into play. So those things that go around your neck that you can pull up, which are not great, but that at least they keep your exhaust in. The gaiters, those are appropriate. And then you
So
conclude.
as of now, it may be first come, first serve for 8U, but I would want to get confirmation on that from the rink. Not the best news.
Yeah, so we have to work through the rink on that one. Once the player's health check, do they go directly in, or are they held at the door? Generally, they go.
They're let in like 5 to 10 minutes before the start of the game or the practice. So they're basically in, 5 or 10 minutes before, and then they have 10 minutes to exit at the end. So they're usually not, they could be standing around lining up, but then they're all health checked and screened and let all in right at once. And then any stragglers will come in after that. So they can't, if you're there a half hour before, you're just going to be hanging out in the parking lot until they allow you to go in. And they try to get the other team out another door first before letting the other team come in. So they don't want kids going out one door and then in the same door. So they're trying to have the flow of traffic work. So there will not, bottleneck, heard there's a bottleneck. I mean, if there's 10 kids trying to get in at once, then the kids at the back, I don't know if I'd call it a bottleneck, but you might have to wait, 45 seconds for the people in front of you.
Bathrooms are open.
Bathrooms are available.
Yeah, bathrooms are available. I have not seen any bottlenecks, certainly not with practice.
I mean, it could get crowded if there's 15 kids, waiting to get in. And usually they let the kids in first, and then like a few minutes later, they'll let the parents in. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's trying to get in, so there could be a little bit of a crowd. And so maybe for travel games, there's 2 teams arriving, right? So I guess for house games, it would be the same. Yeah.
You're certainly welcome to wear your face mask on the ice. I have a friend of mine who plays at Fairfax who has an entire face mask with, filters.
They don't have to, but they could.
They're certainly welcome to.
5:50 practice. That's Monday would be the practice, right, Brendan? Unless you're using game.
Nope, that's Sunday. That's the first event for them is Sunday. So they're going to have Sunday, then Monday this week.
If they need putting on skates.
So here's what I would recommend for the 8U. There's 2 things that you can get. One of them is, and I guess we can post links to these. One of them for the 8U are those little roller skate guards that you can put on over your skates. I have seen kids walking or riding, walking through the parking lot with the plastic skate. Yeah, the roller guards. There's also a boot guard that literally goes underneath your skate, and it looks like a military boot tread. So when it gets wet or if it gets snowy, you can still walk on them. So you can just put those on and then take them off right when you get to the rink. I would also recommend the plastic skate guards because I've seen kids walking across the parking lot in those, and then they take them off, and then there you go. So anything you can do for those 8U guys to put their skates on early and, at the car, put the rubber guards on, that's what I would do.
Also,
Scott, yes.
tell them about at the door that there are like the rubber mats are there. So when they need help tying the skate, the parent can be over there. You know what I mean? Outside the dressing area.
Yeah, but highly recommend
those 2 links that I put up will have just more info you could use to find stuff.
Yeah, I highly recommend either the plastic skate guards, the roller guards, or the scout boots for this year. You want to get, especially when they're, the hard part is they can't, like 8Us are not going to be able to necessarily put those on themselves, but when they come out of the rink, you can put them on real fast and get them away from the area where the rubber guards are, and then you can, get them all the way to the car and then take them off there. That's what I'm going to recommend. Any other questions? I know, Kevin, we still need to weigh in on what we're going to do with the 8U as far as the total number of people on the Olympic rink. And I think we have to go back and think about that a little bit more, but we'll get an answer out to everyone. Are there goalie clinics this session? There is the goalie academy at practice. I don't know as far as the goalie clinics. I know we have the ice. I'm not sure if they're doing the goalie clinics. We'll have to get back to you on that one.
I think we are, but they're not scheduled yet.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will be
Yeah,
doing that.
at the right. The goalie clinics will be at the Loudon Ice Center, but they're
Right.
not on the schedule yet. But they'll be, the sign up will be through the online registration as usual. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Oh, I have one other comment. Somebody asked this earlier. If you had put in a carpool request, I'm going through and trying to make sure those are addressed when I do that initial grouping. If I'm not asking for them, but I know there's going to be somebody who says, oh, I thought I put down that my kid needed to practice later rather than earlier, or earlier than rather than later. I really, unless you absolutely have something that takes, you can't make it, that you can send me something by email, or if there's a problem and you need to be on a later time rather than earlier time, we can work with that. But the days, unlike last time, most years where 12U's practiced on Wednesdays and Fridays, it's all, each league is one day. So there's no switching of days. And there's really nothing I can do about that. And that, folks, is what I had. Anything else? No worries. I am going to call out one person. I see this guy, Jay, and I think it's somebody I played hockey with about 15 years ago. Is that right, Jay?
Oh, 15 years ago is right. We did.
Oh my God. Wow. Hockey is a small world, everybody.
Since we played together, I've been to and back from Korea twice.
Wow. Wow.
That was awesome.
Thank you all very much. Have a great night.
Yep. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. This was great.
Say thanks before we go. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Still have a few. Actually, this is something that's going to continue. There's no reason not to do this every year. Like, there's no reason, even in a normal year, we'd never done this before.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wants to get in the meeting. Yeah. So, all right. I think we're good. Looks like I'm off to practice shortly.
Hang on.
Okay.
Trying to stop everybody from joining. Almost. So when you get off,
We want to kick everybody off?
yeah, that's what I'm doing now. Oh, I don't know who this last person is. So when the meeting ends, you have to, there's something you have to do so that it records.
Yeah, I'm familiar. So I'm going to end, and it's going to, I'm recording it on my computer.
Okay. And this will be the meeting that everyone will hear, so.
Yes, I know.
All
Well,
right.
I can actually crop this at the end.
Oh, okay.
I do a lot of Zoom meetings. So.
All right. Thanks, Brendan. It went well.
Yeah, this was either we answered everybody's questions, or they're like, they don't know what they're doing.
So okay, it's just us. Once it's recorded, then
Well, I'm going to stop the recording.